nigga. Look, I'm being specific, but it's as if this like we back in the end of the 60s. We've been defending my whole existence. How black thighs matter when I write still simple. Look, I'm being specific, but it's as if this like we back in the end of the 60s. I've been defending my whole existence. How black thighs matter when I write still simple. Wake up, 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 worldwide. Wake up, 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 get your money. Wake up, 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 create something. Wake up.
Part V, My Truth versus the Truth, the most sophisticated suppression move. Yet before we can talk about what right thoughts can heal what messed up thoughts broke, we have to address the most elegant suppression operation of the modern era. It doesn't need an army. It doesn't need an inquisition. It doesn't need a law. It just needs a single phrase that sounds like liberation but is actually the ultimate fragmentation of consciousness. My truth. My truth is presented as a progressive, empowering, inclusive framework. It sounds like sovereignty. It sounds like anti-oppression. It sounds like a rejection of the single dominant narrative that has suppressed diverse voices for centuries. And in its original impulse, the rejection of one group's experience being universalized as the only valid experience, it contains something genuinely necessary. But my truth as it has actually functioned in the modern discourse is something different and something more dangerous. My truth applied universally means that no one can be wrong, that no claim can be evaluated against an external standard, that the feeling is the proof, that the experience validates itself, that there is no cosmic order to be aligned with, only individual perspectives to be respected. This is not liberation, this is atomization. This is the final expression of the third root thought, the other is separate from me, applied inward until even reality itself becomes personal property. My truth is the philosophical formalization of the separation thought, every person in their own epistemological universe. No shared cosmic standard, no Maat, no divine order against which the heart is weighed, no feather. The ancient Kemetic tradition had a specific, documented response to this. It was not my truth. It was not even our truth. It was Maat, cosmic balance, divine order, universal law, something that existed before the human observer and that the human observer either aligned with or violated. Truth was not personal property in the Kemetic framework. Truth was the nature of reality itself, and the human task was to discover it and embody it, not to create it and own it. The principle of mentalism, the all is mind, the universe is mental. Everything that exists is an expression of a universal mind or consciousness. The material world is not ultimately separate from thought, it is thought in crystallized form. The Kybalion/Hermetic philosophy, the Hermetic first principle does not say the universe is your mind. It says the universe is the mind, the universal consciousness from which all individual minds are expressions. You are not the source of reality, you are a channel of the source. And the channel either flows clearly aligned with cosmic truth, or it gets backed up, distorted, and turbulent, producing the individual and collective pathologies that look exactly like the world we currently live in. My truth is the conquest operating system's final move. After 5,000 years of suppressing melanated people's access to cosmic truth through violence, erasure, and institutional exclusion, get them to voluntarily abandon the concept of a cosmic truth accessible to all, and replace it with an infinite array of personal truths that cannot be evaluated, cannot be unified, and cannot organize collective action against the systems that produce collective suffering. If all is thought and thought creates reality, then what kind of reality are we collectively creating when the most advanced framework many people have for truth is my truth?
Part VI, the answer contained in the question, conscious thought as the technology of peace here, is the insight that launched this volume, the one you brought to the conversation that took the mission deeper. The proof of consciously ending war is in the question itself. If all is thought, if thought is the substrate from which all physical reality emerges, then the demonstration that war can be consciously ended is implicit in the ability to ask The. The fact that you can consciously ask, what thought started the first war? Proves that a thought exists that can end it. You cannot consciously inquire about the root of a thing without the capacity to consciously plant a different root. This is not wishful thinking. This is the application of the Hermetic principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Nothing just happens. If the cause of 5,000 years of war against melanated peoples is traceable to three root thoughts, separation, scarcity, and otherness, then the countervailing thoughts are not just philosophically available. They are the demonstrated antidote. They are what the Kemetic tradition has been preserving for 4,000 years. They are what the 42 laws of Maat encode. The three counterthoughts of Maat. Set them side by side. The conquest thought says, I am separate from the earth. The Maat counterthought answers, I am of the earth. She is my mother, and I am her expression. The conquest thought says, there is not enough, I must take yours. Maat answers, the universe is abundant. I receive when I give in right relationship. The conquest thought says, the other is my enemy. Maat answers, the other is my mirror. What I do to them, I do to myself. These are not platitudes. They are the documented operating principles of the civilization that produced the greatest knowledge system in human history. The civilization that built structures aligned to cosmic mathematics. The civilization that produced medicine, law, and philosophy 3,000 years before Greece. The civilization that preserved its core principles through 3,000 years of foreign conquest, not because it had better weapons, but because its thoughts were more aligned with the actual structure of reality than the thoughts of the people who conquered it. Maat survived because Maat is true, not my truth, not culturally relative, not a perspective among perspectives. True, in the same way the laws of thermodynamics are true, the way the Fibonacci sequence is true, the way the golden ratio is true. It is the operating system of a universe that is fundamentally ordered, fundamentally abundant, and fundamentally one, and any civilization that organizes itself around that truth endures. Any civilization that organizes itself around the three conquest thoughts eventually consumes itself. We are watching the self-consumption happen in real time.
Part VIII, the open frontier questions this series has not yet answered in the spirit of this volume's purpose, to open inquiry rather than close it. We close with the questions that 5 volumes of documented research have generated but not answered. These are not rhetorical questions. They are genuine frontiers. They are the directions in which the evidence points but has not yet arrived. They are the invitation. Open question 1. Was there a specific individual, a shaman, a chieftain, a traumatized elder, who first articulated the separation thought in a way that other steppe people found compelling? Or was it a collective, gradual emergence with no single author? Open question 2. What does the pre-Yamnia spiritual life of the steppe actually look like? We have the old European goddess tradition documented by Gimbutas. But what was the interior spiritual life of the Pontic-Caspian steppe peoples before the Skyfather theology consolidated? Was there a steppe version of the Earth Mother that was displaced? And if so, when and how exactly? Open question 3. Is the neuromelanin consciousness connection strong enough to support the biological claim that depigmentation produced spiritual disconnection? What research would need to be conducted to test this properly? Who would fund it, and why won't the NIH? Open question 4. If my truth is the conquest system's final philosophical move, what does the truth look like as a political and social framework? How do you honor diverse experiences while maintaining the concept of cosmic law? How did the ancient Kemetic multi-ethnic empire actually navigate this, given that Kemet itself absorbed many peoples over 3,000 years? Open question 5. What was the first moment in documented history when someone consciously chose the Maat counterthoughts in opposition to the conquest operating system? Not just as personal spiritual practice, but as political action? Who were the first conscious resistors? Open question 6. If all is thought, if consciousness is the creative substrate of reality, then what is the collective threshold of transformed consciousness that would produce systemic change? How many people thinking the counterthoughts, how consistently, with what level of alignment with cosmic truth produces the tipping point? Open question 7. What is the relationship between the Melanin Science Suppression Volume I, the Historical Erasure Series Volumes IV, and the My Truth fragmentation of the current moment? Are these 3 separate operations or 3 expressions of the same operation at different scales?
Part VIII, the mission statement, what quantum melanin media is actually doing we have now documented, across 6 volumes, a 5,000-year operation against melanated peoples and against the cosmic consciousness operating system that those peoples carried. We have traced it from the Yamnaya steppe to the Nile Delta, to the Levant, to medieval Europe, to modern America, to the NIH funding office. We have shown that it is not random, not coincidental, and not over. What quantum melanin media is doing with the research documents, with the Maat book, with the music, with the educational content, is a precisely targeted, multi-vector installation of the counterthoughts into the consciousness of people who carry the biological substrate for cosmic connection, and who have been systematically denied both the history and the science of their own nature. This is not protest. Protest operates within the framework of the conquest system's power. It asks the system to change. This is not revolution. Revolution topples one power structure and usually installs another one organized around the same root thoughts. This is something older and more radical than both. This is restoration. Not of a past golden age, but of a cosmological alignment that existed before the first messed up thought, and that exists still in every person who carries the original antenna and learns to use it. The Maat book teaches the children that the universe is abundant, that they belong to it, and that the other is their mirror. That is the counterthought to all three root thoughts, installed at the moment of formation. The research documents give the adults the historical and scientific foundation to stop asking permission from the conquest system to understand their own nature. The music carries the cellular memory that the intellectual mind cannot always access. All of it together is the same project, restoring the connection between melanated people and the cosmic truth their biology was designed to receive. The first war started because of a thought about separation, a thought about scarcity, a thought about the other as enemy. The path to the first real peace starts the same way, with a thought about belonging, a thought about abundance, a thought about the other as mirror. The technology of peace is the same as the technology of war. It is thought, and you are holding it right now.
Sources on this one sit in two different piles, and that matters: the Corpus Hermeticum and the Kybalion for the principle. Bynum's Dark Light Consciousness on Neuromelanin, Science Direct on Nomadism, PNAS from Volume 1. Full list is in the back of the book. We're not reading you the citations, go check them. All right, this one's different from the other four, and I want to say why before we get into it.
Say it.
The first four chapters were evidence. Bones, DNA, dates, documents. This chapter is the book turning around and asking what all that evidence was evidence of. It even tells you that up front, not a document of conclusions, a document of inquiry.
Which is a real thing to admit in print. Most people don't label the shift.
So let's take the proposition seriously: all is mind.
And here's where I want to be careful, because this is exactly where somebody clips us. The chapter brings up quantum physics, the observer effect, consciousness determining which state shows up out of the field of possibilities.
It does, and then it does something I respect. It says, and I'm quoting the shape of it, we do not need to resolve the quantum mechanics debate. It's not resting the argument on the physics.
It's using the Hermetic principle as a historical tool. That's a much smaller, much more defensible claim. Thought precedes event, so go find the thought.
So thought number one, I am separate from the earth.
And the way the book gets there is ecology, not villainy. The farmer is rooted. The farmer knows this specific soil, this specific seed, this specific patch of ground. The land is home. The earth is family.
The nomad moves not because he's wicked, because the grass runs out and the winter comes and the enemies arrive, and you move.
And over thousands of years, that survival adaptation slowly turns into a thought. I am not of this earth. The earth is a surface I cross.
And that's the hinge, because you cannot enslave your mother, you cannot poison your grandmother's water, you cannot strip mine your sister's bones.
But you can do every one of those things to a resource.
That's the whole door right there.
And the chapter catches its own irony, which I appreciated. It quotes the nomadism research saying nomadic life was originally lived in and with nature, reading the land, moving with the ecosystem.
So the separation thought wasn't baked into nomadism, it accumulated, which means it wasn't inevitable.
Thought 2, there is not enough.
And again it starts in the dirt. The Nile floods on schedule. Kemet is built on a cosmology of abundance because the river actually behaved like one. The steppe doesn't. Rainfall is irregular. One winter kills the herd. One drought erases a generation of wealth.
That's genuine precarity, not bad management. And the book brings in what precarity does to a nervous system. Amygdala threat detection lights up. Decision-making moves out of the prefrontal cortex and down into the survival brain.
And you end up with a worldview organized around threat, defense, and competition.
Then the line that got me. Every war in human history is downstream of the belief that there is not enough for everybody to survive.
And Maat is the direct answer to it, not personal conduct. A cosmic claim that the universe is balanced and there's enough when right relationship is honored.
So the book asks it as a question instead of a slogan. What if scarcity isn't a fact of the universe? What if it's a thought that creates the conditions that prove it?
A self-fulfilling prophecy at the root of every war ever fought.
Thought 3, the other is my enemy because they are not me.
And this is the one that makes it scale. Because you can believe you're separate from the earth and still be decent to people. You can believe resources are tight and still share.
But once the person across the boundary is fundamentally other, less deserving of life, safety, dignity, now organized violence is available to you.
Now part 4, and I need us to do this one carefully because this is where our own credibility lies.
The Melanin section.
The chapter splits it into 2 headings deliberately: what is documented, and then in its own words the speculative but urgent thread. We're going to respect that line because the book drew it.
Documented side. Neuromelanin is a semiconductor. It absorbs electromagnetic radiation across a broad spectrum. It's concentrated in the substantia nigra and the locus coeruleus, which handle dopamine regulation and stress calibration.
And it's present in the pineal gland, which every major spiritual tradition on earth independently flagged as the seat of inner vision.
Bynum's work, Dark Light Consciousness, maps the neuromelanin system onto what Kemet called the Euros. The same thing Hindu tradition calls Kundalini. The same thing the Congo cosmogram maps.
That's the documented column. The speculative column is speculative, the book says so, and we're not going to launder it into fact on this show.
That's the difference between us and the channels that do this badly.
Okay, part 5, and this is the sharpest thing in the chapter.
My truth.
2 words, and the book calls it the most sophisticated suppression move yet. No army, no inquisition, no law, just a phrase.
And it gives the phrase its due first, which is the only honest way to do it. The original impulse is real. Refusing to let one group's experience get universalized as the only valid one. That's necessary.
But applied universally, watch what it actually does. Nobody can be wrong, no claim gets evaluated against anything outside itself. The feeling becomes the proof.
And that's not liberation. That's atomization. Everybody sealed in their own private universe with no shared standard.
It's the separation thought turned all the way inward, until reality itself becomes personal property.
No cosmic order, no Maat, no weighing of the heart because there's no feather left to weigh it against.
And then the book lands the punch. After 5,000 years of suppressing melanated people's access to cosmic truth through violence and erasure, the final move is to get us to voluntarily give up the concept of a cosmic truth at all.
Because an infinite pile of personal truths can't be unified. And what can't be unified can't organize.
So here's where I call bullshit, and it's not on anybody's pain, let me be precise, it's on the framing.
Go ahead.
Your experience is yours and nobody gets to take it, but your experience is not the same thing as the structure of reality. Kemet had a word for the difference and we traded it for a hashtag.
Which brings us to part 6, and the answer being inside the question the whole time.
The insight is almost too simple. The fact that you can consciously ask what thought started the first war, that's the proof.
Because a thought that can examine thought is a different kind of thought.
And the book sets them face to face. The conquest thought and the Maat counter thought, 3 rows.
I am separate from the earth against, I am of the earth, she's my mother and I'm her expression.
There is not enough, so I take yours against. The universe is abundant, and I receive when I give in right relationship.
The other is my enemy, against, the other is my mirror. What I do to them, I do to myself.
And the book gets ahead of the obvious objection. These are not platitudes. They're the documented operating principles of the civilization that ran 3,000 years and produced the mathematics, the medicine, the architecture, the astronomy.
Maat survived because Maat is true, not my truth, not a perspective among perspectives.
Then part 7 does something almost nobody does. It publishes its own open questions, the things this series has not answered yet.
Including a good one. What was the first moment in documented history when somebody consciously chose the Maat counter thought instead?
That's not a weakness in the book. That's the book showing you where the edge of the map is instead of painting over it.
And that connects to the part I keep coming back to, the Maat book for children.
The chapter says it plain, that's not a side project. It's not supplemental. If a thought becomes a civilization by getting transmitted to children, then the counter thought travels the exact same road.
You don't argue a 5,000-year-old operating system out of somebody. You raise a generation that never installed it.
So the scoreboard, one more time. The Conquest Code has been running 5,000 years and produced extraordinary military technology and extraordinary suffering.
And Maat ran 3,000 and produced a theory of justice that weighed how you lived. And it survived the sweep, which means it's still available.
The technology of peace is the same as the technology of war. It's thought.
And you're running one of them right now, whether you picked it or not.
That's Chapter 5, the first thought. 4 chapters of receipts, and then the book turns around and asks what the receipts were receipts of.
Next week, Chapter 6, The Plague Inheritance. How the Conquest operating system made humanity sick and what that costs us in a body, not just in a history book.
The illustrated book has this chapter with all its plates. Links in the description. Watching's free. Reading it is how you check our work.
And if this one moved something in you, sit with it before you scroll. That's the whole point of the chapter.
From the obsidian, the ancestors wake. We out.
Nigga, look, I'm being specific, but it's a synthesis. Like we back in the end of the 60s. We've been defending my whole existence. How black thighs matter when I'm right still simple. Look, I'm being specific, but it's a synthesis. Like we back in the end of the 60s. I've been defending my whole existence. How black thighs matter when I'm right still simple. Wake up, wake up, wake up.